If your marriage is on the brink of divorce right now and you're trying to save it, you'll want to watch this video and apply these 5 steps that I'm going to talk you through. Now, I know if you're watching this, you're sitting here thinking, what on earth is he wearing these sunglasses for? But just for a little bit of clarity, yesterday I had some eye surgery done just to correct my vision, and it's super bright here, super sunny, and yeah, it's too hard not wearing them. And so hopefully it's not too much of a distraction, and you can actually take in all the messages and all the learnings that you get from today and create those shifts both internally and within your marriage. And make sure you hit that subscribe button below and click on that bell notification as well, so every week you get access to my latest videos where I talk you through more about how to save your marriage, how to heal from infidelity, and how to really become the best version of yourself. Now, working through a process of trying to save a marriage is challenging. There's no doubt about that, because often you've been in a difficult place for a long time, and sometimes people come to me after 10, 15, 20 years of marriage and it's all just gone completely to shit. And so trying to work through all of that and sort of unpack it all and get to a place of creating real shifts in the marriage and also within yourself can be a challenging exercise. But one of the things that I've really tried to do is put systems together, to put frameworks together to help clients to create the shifts that they're looking for. But one of the things I want to quickly talk about here and explain is this marital ladder that you can see on your screen right now. And effectively, it's almost like the steps that we want to take in terms of the evolution within a marriage and the places that we ultimately want to get to. And I feel that in my experience, and not only in my experience with clients, but also my experience in my marriage and past relationships, if you can work your way up these ladders and build these foundations, it's incredible how special relationships can actually turn out. Equally, if you don't address them, it can cause huge problems. Now, the first part and the most important part of this ladder is the emotional healing and perception shifting. Okay, now what that means is that when we often come into a relationship, we bring a wounded version of ourselves. We've gone through different stages of our lives, different challenges. Some of us have had to deal with trauma at a young age. Some people have to deal with, sexual abuse and all sorts of challenges, like really, really painful things. And what happens though is that if we bring those into a marriage, it can cause problems. Now, just to be clear here, I'm not saying that every single person that has gone through sexual trauma or anything like that is doomed if they haven't resolved their challenges in a marriage. Like, it absolutely can be worked through. However, what we're trying to figure out here is ultimately, how can we be the best version of ourselves? How can we show up in the best possible way? If we're not showing up in the best possible way, then that's where problems arise. Now, to give you an idea of this, let's say someone has had to deal with something extreme like that. It means that often they're going to be a little bit uncomfortable, maybe expressing themselves in a sexual way, or even opening up on a lot of levels, or maybe they've suppressed a lot of that pain over the years, and on top of it, they've put layers and layers of protection. So they might be overworking themselves, or they might be overeating so that people aren't interested in them and giving them any kind of attention, which then affects their self-esteem and self-worth and so on. If you observe those kind of patterns going on, that is naturally going to have an impact on the marriage, because then the husband might feel like he's a bit left out. Whether or not it's actually being communicated and disclosed, some of that pain may not have happened as well. That also occurs in marriages. So you get this range of different behaviors that occurs as a result of some of that trauma. Now, what's really important though is that some of that is worked through. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to get it completely resolved and it's happily ever after. Often this can be a journey for some people, despite what some people say, which is like shift it overnight and then everything just changes. I'm telling you, it has to be a journey sometimes for some people. Everyone's at a different level of pain. Everyone's at a different level of wounding. And so we have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis and work through it accordingly with that person. But we've got to create the healing on that front. When you've applied a level of healing, and then you also start to create a perception shift of yourself, which is to say that you look at yourself in a different way, that you elevate your standards of who you are as a person. Rather than looking at yourself as I'm not good enough and I'm a failure and nothing ever works for me and I've got no self-esteem and no self-worth, you start to see yourself as this incredible human being who is perfect in their own imperfection, who is, kind and caring and warm and has confidence and has self-esteem and self-worth and all of that stuff. If you have that as your foundation, right, then you can move to the next level. And the next level is what we call values alignment. Now what happens is when you've got that level of emotional stability, right, between two people, then you can start to align your values. Now, when two people have similar values, now I don't mean that, one person can like Harry Potter and the other person can like trance music, and so because we're not aligned on that level, then it's not going to work out. And this is a true example as well in terms of me and my wife. But I'm not talking about those little things like that. What I'm talking about are the big ticket items. What is most important for you in your life, and what is most important for him in his life? Now, to give you an example, for me, one of the things that was really important was wanting to have someone who was going to be really, really courteous and kind towards my friends, towards my family, actually had an active interest in terms of my own growth and wanting to support me in my own endeavors, and vice versa. I wanted someone who was going to be genuinely loving for my highest good, and vice versa. There are different kind of values that we all uphold, and it's different for different people. Another one for me was integrity. Integrity has always been my number one value. So I have to apply integrity in everything that I do. Now, some people don't value integrity as much. So if you've got this complete misalignment on those core fundamentals, it's very difficult to create a high quality marriage, because you're talking about the very base of what a marriage stands for. And if you're not at the same level on that front, it can create frustration, it can create hurt, and it stacks quicker than you can even imagine. So values alignment is key. And once you've got values alignment, then that leads to mental and emotional stimulation. So here's the thing, you've got a level of emotional healing and perception shifting that's gone on at the base. Now, just to be clear here, there is always an element of growth and healing and so on that comes in a marriage. As I said before, you're never going to be perfect, right? But if you've got a decent amount of healing that's done, you've got those values aligned, then you've got this beautiful foundation there, and you can start to enjoy each other at a mental and emotional level. You're stimulated on those levels. You've got this beautiful connection that then starts to occur at that point. And you start to just build and build and build on that level. Now, once you've got that mental and emotional stimulation, you're excited about each other, you enjoy hanging out with each other, it brings you joy, it brings you fun, but also it stimulates you in terms of intellectually. Then you go to the next level, which is all about marital connection and compatibility. So you've got all of those foundations. Now you're actually kind of marriage material. You've got this beautiful, beautiful foundation. Everything's working sensationally well. You then see each other as this lovely unit. And then very close to that is all around physical passion. See, those kind of work hand in hand as well. Once you've got all those foundations in place, generally at that point, there starts to be some physical passion. And when you're at that highest level where you've got this incredible connection on all levels, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, your values are aligned, you've got that stimulation mentally and emotionally, you've done a lot of healing, but you can continue to work through that healing, and you've got that physical passion. That's how we create an extraordinary marriage. That's the levels that we want to work up. And I've seen it time and time again with people who have got extraordinary marriages. Now look, some of you are going to sit there and maybe go, well, but hang on, we get along really well, we connect well, but we don't have any physical passion. There are always going to be little nuances to each of those levels, and sometimes it's a situation we have to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. But as a framework, this is absolutely what I see on a regular basis. Now, what do we have to do here to then create the actual shifts that you're wanting to create at this moment in time? Your marriage is on the rocks. There may have been potential infidelity. He may have said that he wants a separation or a divorce, and you're doing your utmost best to try and save your marriage. How do we go about elevating up these levels? Well, I'm going to talk you through 5 really important steps that you want to start taking right now to create those shifts, to really create those changes that you're looking for in your life at this moment in time. And once you start doing that, hopefully things can start to move forward for you and really create the transformation that you're looking for. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm not necessarily going to explain these in sequential order, except the last one that I'm going to talk about is the most important and the one that you need to focus on. Okay. Now, the first point I want to raise around what you want to understand is understand core needs. Now, the thing is that we're all driven by different human needs. However, it's really important to understand how your husband is actually driven on that front. Is it really important for him to feel like really special and unique? Does he crave a lot of security? Is he like the center of the party all the time, the life of the party? Is he always wanting to get accolades and so on? You know, does he like to get familiar with the love languages? Is he always focused on, you know, words of affirmation, or is he focused on, you know, acts of service and so on? What are the different needs within him? If you can understand his needs more, then you can start to serve at that level. Because at the end of the day, a marriage is about giving. It's not about just constantly getting. We have to focus on how we can serve and how can we give. And I don't mean that from like a servant's mindset where you're just all about him 24/7. Obviously, there needs to be a little bit of reciprocation. But if we can go in there with the mindset that we want to try and put forth the energy to just give, where you can learn about your husband in the best possible way, it means that you can start to really understand what it is that's actually motivating him and how you can elevate and meet those needs on a regular basis. And if you can meet those needs on a regular basis, then the reality is that he's not going to want to go anywhere else. He's not going to want to try and, you know, be with anyone else or immerse himself in other things, because he gets his needs met here. That's the most important thing. It can have really, really positive impacts if you can start to focus on that. Now, the second part of this process is understanding more about male psychology. See, men and women, they fundamentally operate in very different ways. There is absolutely some similarities. There's no doubt about that. We can look at it from a scientific perspective and know that human beings all have a brain, and then those brains operate in different ways. But if we dive a little bit deeper into this, we know that there are some fundamental differences in terms of biochemistry within men and women. There is just simply a difference. And we've got to understand those differences. And when we understand those differences, then we can adapt our communication once again. We can understand what's going on at that deeper level. When he comes home and he goes off into his cave or whatever, and he's just wanting to be by himself, we don't interpret that as, oh, he doesn't love me, or he doesn't care for me, or he's not giving me the attention. We understand, okay, well, he just needs his time over there for a little bit. He will come back, right? Understanding those things. Once again, there is a very complex web of things that are going on in relationships on a regular basis. So yes, we have to try and simplify it, but sometimes we have to have understanding that, you know, in some instances, he's going to stay in his cave because he's got other things going on. He's got other challenges that he's faced with at that moment in time. But if we can understand the differences between men and women, understand how men operate in those situations, then you can shift your ability to communicate with him and start to not only meet those needs, but know the right thing to say at the right time. Now, by understanding these first two components, then leads to the third step, which is all around a perception shift of him. Now, a lot of the time when men act in a certain way, right? Let's say, for example, he's shutting down, he's stonewalling you all the time, or he's like constantly blaming you for things. Most people will look at some of those behaviors and think, well, he's a narcissist, or, you know, he's just a terrible person. He just treats me so badly all the time and doesn't care about me and so on. It's really important that we shift our perception of what's going on here. You know, he's acting in those ways because the reality is that on some level he is wounded. He's going through some stuff on the inside, right? Now, whatever that is dependent on the individual. Okay, some individuals feel like they feel so inferior as a person that all you even have to do is, hey, listen, next time you feed our son, can you just make sure you feed him this stuff rather than that stuff? Immediately the message he's hearing is, you fucked up again, you failed, I need you to do this better next time, right? Because he feels inadequate on some level, and that's what's come up inside him at that moment. It may seem like he's being rude and mean and he's been critical, but the reality is that he is wounded, and we have to change the perception of that. Once again, there are exceptions to the rule, but on the assumption that you are dealing with a man, a good man, the truth is that often they are wounded, and that is why they're being on the defensive. And just like anything in life, if we're hurting, it doesn't take much to trigger us. But if we're happy and we're joyful and we feel secure in ourselves, someone can say something to us and it doesn't really bother us. It's like, yeah, whatever, that's your opinion, no dramas. But if I'm wounded and I feel like I'm already just not much of like not a very good human being, I feel like I'm constantly failing in my life and so on, and someone says to me, hey man, look, how come you didn't do that? You were supposed to have got that done at work and you didn't do it. Why is that? Immediately we're going to feel attacked. We're going to feel triggered on so many levels, and we're going to project out our own insecurities. Okay? So we've got to change our perception of him to one of empathy and one of understanding. And the fourth shift we want to make is an environmental shift. Now, one of the things I'm a real big believer in is the environment that we surround ourselves with has a direct impact on our emotional state. If we are surrounded by negativity, if that's all we surround ourselves with, if we're constantly talking to our friends about how everything's all wrong, if we're watching the news and it's just all bad stuff that we're listening into, if we are, constantly reading books and watching videos and, engaging in other activities that are dragging us down and not allowing us to be our best self, it's going to keep us at that lower level, right? Now, I can't remember exactly where I read this, but it was a book and it said something like, show me your 7 closest friends, divide their incomes by 7, and that's what you'll be earning. And what they're trying to say is that we are a product of our environment. So if we're always around that negativity, that's the level that we're going to be living at. So you have to be very, very careful around the environment that you're in, the types of people that you're interacting with. Now, am I saying, get rid of those people? No, but just limit it. Be mindful of how much time you spend with people who are dragging you down mentally and emotionally, because the more you do that, the more it's going to drag you down. Then you're going to be in a negative state. Then that's going to then impact the marriage along with his negative state, and you're just going to keep clashing. It's not going to be fun. Okay, so you really want to create those shifts internally and also environmentally. That's really important. And finally, what we want to do is really focus on emotional healing. Okay, now to me, this is the most important aspect of any transformational journey. Now let me tell you the reason why. We are all at different levels. Okay, we're all at different levels of growth, different levels of consciousness, different levels of healing. And one of the things that, I'll be honest, it grinds my gears a little bit when I hear this a lot, about all you need to do is just change your thoughts, just shift them quickly, affirmations and incantations and all these different things that are just going to create a shift in your thought patterns, and everything will be all good. Now, to me, in this world, it's setting you up for failure. Okay? It's like, shift your beliefs, shift your identity, avoid all these other tactics and just focus on those things. It simply doesn't work. Now, you're listening to a guy here who I have tried so many things. Now, I'm the sort of person, like in the past, I've done so many affirmations and so many different mentally oriented techniques, right? And I've put so much time and energy into it, but none of it really created the proper shifts that I needed on the inside. Now, the reason is that When you are dealing with some sort of pain on some level, that pain is a reaction or a common reaction to how we've reacted in other areas of our lives in the past, and usually how we've reacted when we were younger. You know, those first 7 years are kind of the years in which we're on autopilot, and a lot of the programming kind of happens at that point. Okay? Then what happens is if you find out that your husband's leaving, for example, and that brings up huge bouts of abandonment or rejection, and let's say that abandonment resulted in your father leaving you when you were a kid, or saying that he wanted to divorce your mum, and then he left, and that suddenly made you feel these huge wounds of abandonment. The chances are, and I pretty much guarantee, most people aren't trained on how to process those emotions at that time. So what do? They find tactics and defense mechanisms to handle those emotions in those times. In other words, they're in survival mode. That's it. They're in complete survival mode, and they're just trying to resolve and get through life ultimately. But what it's meant is that those emotions that were coming up have been suppressed, right? They've been shoved down. They're pushed and pushed and pushed. And then as we get older, we adopt those same tactics. We don't learn how to do these things. So what do? We talk about it with our friends. We maybe read a couple of books here and there. We find ourselves, maybe listening to sad songs, or trying to even just go for a walk thinking that's going to resolve the problems. But we find our brain just constantly running that activity. Now, the issue with just trying to change the programming within your brain is that all it's doing, the emotions trying to come up, and you're trying to just change those thoughts. So what happens? The energy, i.e. the emotions that are coming up, but the energy is trying to get up, but it keeps getting suppressed. Comes up, suppressed, comes up, suppressed. And it continues to get suppressed over and over. What does this mean? Well, it might give you the illusion that your brain can just shift these thoughts and everything's all resolved. But the deeper impacts of it is that sometimes people can run into health problems. And the other main one that I've seen a lot is people often think that they're all good. They try and take on this kind of fake it till you make it sort of approach, or they genuinely do feel they've created this huge identity shift. But down the line, something happens, boom, and they crash. And I remember years ago going to a seminar, and there was a lot of this work around programming and shifting your whole identity, and everything changed overnight. And it was I think a 5-day seminar, and everyone was creating these incredible shifts, or so it seemed. And I vividly recall walking out one day at the end, and there was a lady who had actually got up on stage. She'd had this supposed amazing shift, amazing transformation. And then at the end, she was in an ambulance because she'd had a complete panic attack and completely crashed at that point. And so I'm very much a believer that everyone is at a different stage, right? Lots of people have gone through a certain level of healing. So it might be that, changing some of the beliefs or changing some of the values is important for you. And it just might be that little thing that you need to focus on to create that meteoric shift for you. But for other people who haven't done a lot of healing around maybe their childhood trauma or other aspects of their life, if you just go through and just try and change your thoughts and repeat affirmation after affirmation, and use various other techniques that are out there to try and just reprogram the brain, all it's going to do is continue to suppress those emotions, and eventually it'll get brought up in some capacity. So I really want to encourage you that if you're someone who has tried some of those other techniques and really struggles with being able to create long-term shifts, I'd highly encourage you to focus on the emotional healing work. It is really, really powerful. It's very hard to sort of explain all this stuff in terms of showing you specific techniques right here, right now in a short video like this. So if you are wanting to really create those profound shifts, then what I encourage you to do is in the description section below, you'll see a link which just says book a call with me. Just click on that link, choose a time that works for you, and then I'll contact you at that specific time, just so I can learn a little bit more about where you are now, where you want to get to. If you're wanting to save your marriage, you want to do some healing on that front, you really want to create some of those shifts on an emotional level. And if I think it's a good fit for you, then we can bring you on board and I can actually show you a little bit more about how to actually create these proper transformations on the inside. It is super powerful. I've done it in my own life. And even to this day, even if there are things that pop up, I know how to process in a way that really can stand the test of time, as opposed to things that, you know, just last a little bit and then disappear and fade off, and then, you know, I have to deal with that same thing over and over again, right? It's about, there are always going to be things that pop up from time to time in different areas, but you know how to handle it, you know how to process it and properly release it. So if it's something that feels right for you, if you connect with what I'm talking about, then I'd love to be of service to you. So once again, click on that link, choose a time that works for you, and then I'll contact you at that scheduled time. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've liked it, make sure you hit that like button below. If you want to get more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And do let me know what your biggest takeaway is, or if you have any questions, or you want to let me know what video you'd like me to create next. Hopefully I won't have to wear my sunglasses next time. But if you want me to create any particular videos, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll make sure I shoot those videos as well for you. And if you want to learn whether your husband's going through a midlife crisis, click on this video above. And if you want to learn whether no contact is a good strategy for you now, click this video above. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.